What would you do if you found a mysterious-looking handbag on the New York subway? We'll find out what happens in Greta. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Hey, Popcorn Talk fans. We are talking Greta today. Super excited to be here. I'm your host, Mina Wahab. And just to let you know, this episode of Greta, or this movie review of Greta, is going to be spoiler rich. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, please put it on pause, go see the movie, and then come back to this week's discussion about Greta. I just want to start off with my overall thoughts, saying that despite a lot of the negative critiques of Greta, I actually really enjoyed this film. Just watching the trailer, you kind of know exactly what's going to happen in Greta, but even though the movie was extremely predictable, it didn't take away from the incredible performances that we saw from Elizabeth Huppert, who plays Greta, and also Chloe Moretz, who plays Frances. And this is a psychological thriller / horror, and the premise of the movie is that we have this sweet, young, naive, doe-eyed girl played by Chloe Moretz, and she just lost her mother. She's from Boston, but she's moved to New York City kind of like as a fresh start, and she lives with her roommate Erica in this beautiful, posh New York City apartment, which honestly, I have no idea how they can afford that when they're in their early to mid-20s. But the movie starts out with her finding a handbag on the New York subway, and she realizes who this handbag belongs to. So she takes it to Greta's doorstep, who is this older woman played by Elizabeth Huppert. And they kind of form this beautiful bond in the beginning, and Greta is sort of like this mother figure to Frances, and she kind of fills that void where her mother once was. But then things start getting really, really weird, and that's where the trouble ensues. Even the roommate says, okay, this relationship isn't normal. Why are you hanging out with this older woman and not socializing with your peers? And it turns into this very, intense stalker situation where we find out all these things about how the handbags have been placed strategically around the subways because it's Elizabeth Huppert's character's way of luring girls in to essentially replace the daughter that she lost via suicide. And we later realize, okay, something's not right. How come all of these girls have gone missing, and what is she really doing? And that's essentially what the movie is all about. It's about Frances trying to escape this older woman who happens to be a stalker. And what I would say really carried this movie wasn't necessarily the plot, because the plot is very basic. It's kind of like this Grimm's fairy tale plot. Even the director, Neil Jordan, said that he was kind of going for this fairy tale twist where it's kind of like the Grimm's fairy tales, where it starts out with this kind of like childlike, beautiful premise, but then ends up being darker and darker and darker, and that's kind of how the movie evolves and what we see. But I do want to say it is the acting, it is the performances that really carried this movie. Elizabeth Huppert is very well known in France. She's won awards at Cannes, and she's obviously recognized in the United States as well too now. And Chloe Moretz, I would say, is a rising star. She was in Kick-Ass 2, and I love how we see her in this different role where she plays this beautiful, doe-eyed girl who's kind of naive and lost and is navigating her way through New York City. And what I think is really interesting, even when you're looking at the casting of these two brilliant actresses side by side, we see how different their features are. We see that, physically, Chloe really does embody that role of the sweet, innocent girl next door who is just so pure. It's from everything from the way her face is shaped to her very full features. Her features are very soft and very welcoming. And then Elizabeth Huppert, on the other hand, yes, in the beginning of the movie, she does have this very, nurturing nurturing vibe to her, and she seems very welcoming. But when you look at her features, they are more angular. They're a little bit harsher. And in the movie, it definitely felt like they made it look like she had a little bit more wrinkles underneath her eyes. They made her physical appearance a little bit more, I don't want to say grungier because she was so put together, but in her face, there was just something about it that wasn't right, where everything was kind of like pulled back, her hair is flipped up, and there's something very eerie about a character who's so put together, and it's typically that type of character where you see them so put together to be the ones that are the creepiest. It's kind of Stepford Wivesy in a way. So I really love the juxtaposition between the very soft features of Chloe Moretz, contrasted with Elizabeth Huppert's more like sharper features, and I feel like those physical features were embodied in the performances themselves and how the characters kind of played out in terms of personality. So I think they did a very good job with casting, even with the best friend. Usually the best friend has like this stereotypical role of being like, oh, don't go there, oh, don't do this, and they're the ones that get killed first. But I love that we had a best friend, Erica, played by, let me look up the actress's name to get it completely right. Micah Monroe plays Erica Penn in this movie, and I really enjoyed watching her performance. I thought she was fun. I thought she was spunky. She's kind of like that sarcastic friend that's the realist with you. That's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going to this girl's house? This is freaking weird. Why are you doing this? So I kind of like what she added to the role. I thought it was fun without being like, I don't think any of these characters were necessarily like, I didn't see her as being a character that was put in a box. No pun intended there for those of you who saw the movie. But I do think that for her to come at the very end of the movie and save the day and have that other role where she's playing this innocent girl with a southern accent and the darker wig and being able to outsmart Greta, I thought it was such a nice touch and such a great creative decision to have her come in. And that was one of the things I really liked about this movie. I feel like normally when we get a movie that deals with a stalker and someone being stalked, it's something along the lines of, a creepy old man or a serial killer-y looking guy. And we get that in movies like Disturbia and Red Eye, where we always have male figures being either the serial killer or the stalker. But it was refreshing to see a different take on this trope of having the stalker be someone who, at first glance, is actually rather warm and inviting and also unassuming. And we even see in terms of like class differences, like she's actually not a French woman. We find out later on that she's from Hungary. But the fact that we see that she's like this bougie upper class woman who plays the piano and who has the finer tastes in life and likes the finer things, but comes across as like sweet and humble. It was a very nice touch to see all of that there. And I do think that gave this movie a very lovely feminist touch to it. So there were a lot of things I liked about this movie, but there were also some things about this movie that I found to be completely unbelievable, in the sense that there were so many plot holes from the very beginning of the movie, where we see that these two girls live in this beautiful, posh, fancy apartment, which they have no way of even being able to afford unless it's bought from their parents, to even the plot holes, like every single decision that Frances makes in this movie is what gets her into this situation. It's her naivete. It's the fact that she's like, oh, let me help this older woman. And then even the way things were handled at the restaurant, where I just feel like there were so many things that could have been avoided if she talked to the right people. And yes, Frances does try to talk to the police. She does try to do things, but she also gives out her phone number to this lady, and she develops a relationship with her very quickly and without really giving it time. And she just, I think that's what happens when you're this young girl who has a big heart and has gone through loss, that you're kind of like willing to quickly empathize with this older woman and be there for her. And you kind of want to find someone that can be kind of like, not a surrogate mother, but someone that you can have a relationship with that can kind of be like this role model to you. So I did enjoy those themes, even though the plot holes I would say that mainly existed were like, okay, why didn't she give her best friend the address of this lady's house when she realized how weird she was being? Why didn't she take the bag to the police department? Why did she have to go inside for that long and hang out with the old woman? Why did she go to the basement when she was trying to escape from the old lady? Why did she try to patch things up with the old woman instead of just making a run for it, you know, maybe laying low for a bit, maybe not having that secondary contact with her? I don't know. I just feel like things were handled in a way that endangered her even more. Even when we see how she handles her, like, why would she tell her she found all the handbags? I don't understand that. If you know there's something wrong with the situation, don't tell her what you know, because then she knows what you know, and then you pose this threat to her where she needs to get rid of you or make sure you keep your mouth shut at all costs. So those were like the plot holes, and the parts of the story that I felt like were a little unbelievable. But without that, we wouldn't have this psychological thriller / horror. I also do want to talk a little bit about the tone of the movie. This is what I thought was done really well in terms of cinematography, production design, and setting. I love that we have two very different worlds, all within the framework of New York City. So we have the very happy New York City where the sun shines bright and the apartment is well lit and you have beautiful plants in there and it's upscale. And then you have Chloe J. Moretz riding her bike in the city with, you know, very happy music playing in the background. And then it shifts from that very beautiful dynamic and that very happy, joyful scene to New York City at night, which is a completely different New York City than the New York City you see during the daytime. The New York City at night is a little bit more ominous, a little bit more threatening. There's a party scene, there are bars, you're taking the subway, you lose reception when you're on the subway, you run into wacky people, and you just feel this like tone of, oh, this is a dangerous place, we are not safe here. And we feel that even when we go into Greta's home, that at first it seems welcoming because of the piano, but then the little things like someone banging on the secret room that is behind the piano, like all of these little things that add this feeling of, okay, we're not safe anymore, what's happening, we really gotta figure this out. So tone was great. I thought that was well done by the director. And when it came to pacing, I thought that the pacing was well done. I didn't feel like I was in the theater for longer than I needed to be. I didn't feel like it was cut short. I felt like the pacing was perfect. A lot of critics of this movie say that the pacing was horrible, and I've heard two very different things. Some critics say, you know, the pacing was way too slow. It felt like a 3-hour movie when it was actually a 1 hour and 40-minute movie, whereas other critics actually argue that, oh no, the pacing was way too fast. There's no way you could just form a relationship with a person that quickly and have it turn sour that fast. But I do think that the pacing was just right. I don't think this is like the Goldilocks fairy tale. It wasn't too long, it wasn't too slow, it wasn't too fast. I do think it was just right because we had enough time to understand, like, okay, this is what it is. She formed a friendship. It's a cute encounter, and then it turns sour quickly. And I think that just mirrors Greta's mental state, is that Greta is unpredictable. Like, she seems like this sweet lady, but clearly is suffering from some sort of mental illness. We don't know exactly what she has, but we do know that she's off. And like I said earlier, it's those people who seem like perfect on the exterior that there's just something not right when you're that perfect. It looks like she's about to erupt at any second. And I thought in terms of directing, what was done well was all of the shots we see of Greta just standing there doing nothing, and how those scenes are so intense and frightening. And arguably, the scenes where Greta is standing looking at Francis from outside of her restaurant are even more frightening than the scenes when Greta is with her, threatening her life physically. And I think it's because of that that fear of, oh, what will happen next, that makes the scenes where she's not really doing anything except staring even that much more intense. So all of those things were done great. And I do want to go a little bit over the critics' reviews even more, because on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm reading this right now, it says that it received a 55% rating from critics, and the audience score was actually 50%. So I found this to be very surprising, because normally we have audiences like movies more than we have the critics like it. But here are a few of the things that the critics were saying about the movie. One of the reviews was, be sure to wear a watch. It will give you something to look at. Another negative review was, despite the first-rate production values and the game performances from the cast, Greta can't escape from the formulaic screenplay that dogs at it every turn. And then another negative review was, in the end, Greta proves to be little more than a B movie with strong production values and an eclectic cast. Anyone who attends with lowered expectations probably won't be disappointed, but this is far from Jordan at his best. You know, honestly, when I look at these critic reviews, I do think that they're a bit too harsh, because when you're going to see this movie, you're not going to be surprised. This is not a Gone Girl. This is not a Shutter Island. This is not something that's going to have this crazy twist. When you go to see this movie, you know exactly what you're signing up for. Everything that you're signing up for is already in the trailer. So if I have any negative critique of this movie, it's that I wish the trailer didn't give everything away, because I think if you go into this movie not knowing what to expect, you enjoy it way more. But I also think that you can watch the trailer for this movie and really enjoy it, even knowing what will happen, because it's not just about plot, it's about performances. And like I said, the performances are so great to watch. And when I say the performances, I'm mainly talking about Elizabeth Huppert. Her performance is absolutely fantastic. It's a delightful performance where even when the detective comes to discover where Greta is hiding Francis, that, you know, we don't know what to expect, but then we find out that she ends up killing the detective and then doing this little twirl to classical music, and it looks like she's doing this ballet routine for a little bit, and it's just so off-putting but also entertaining at the same time, where it's those little things about her character that really carry it. I feel like if Elizabeth Huppert was not cast in this movie, it would not be that great to watch. It would just be like any other movie, but it really is that performance that carries it. When it comes to Chloe Moretz, I think a lot of actresses could have played this role, but in terms of casting, like I said, her physical features of being so doe-eyed and innocent and sweet make it that much more fun to watch, because we want to know more. Overall, I would say I really did enjoy the movie. I wouldn't necessarily watch it again in theaters, but I would definitely watch it at home, because it's fun. Because of the jump scares, it's fun to go with people. It's not a movie that I would like to see alone. I just think it's like a fun movie to watch. And the only criticism I have of it in terms of story and plot points is that I wish we had more insight into why Greta was the way that she was, because we don't know why she's crazy. We don't know why she, you know, tortured her daughter and hit her when she wasn't playing piano the right way, or put her in this box and trapped her in there when she didn't listen. We don't know why she's that crazy and abusive towards her daughter, and why she's looking to fill that void with other people. So I wish we had a little bit more insight into who she was and why she pretended to be this French woman when she was from Hungary, and why she was the way she was. And we didn't get that. That was the only part where I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. And I wish we also got a little bit more from the dynamic between Frances and her father. That would have been nice to get a little bit more of that. But I do like what we got out of the best friend. I thought she had one of my favorite performances, because it was so fun, and it was such a nice twist at the end to have her come to the rescue and figure everything out. And the way the movie ended, I was a fan of it. It was kind of cheesy, but at the same time empowering, where they're sitting together and they're like, okay, what do we do now? And it's like, well, obviously call the cops, but instead they put Elizabeth Huppert in the toy box, and then they lock it with this Eiffel Tower figurine, which was so fitting. And the movie ends with it kind of opening up a little, where you don't know if Elizabeth Huppert is going to escape or not, or if she's dead for good. So classic horror movie ending. I enjoyed it. I would give this movie probably like a 6.5 out of 10. It was better than average for me. It was enjoyable. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. My favorite psychological thriller would be Gone Girl. But if you want a movie like that, don't go see this. If you want to be entertained and you want something predictable but still enjoyable, definitely watch Greta, especially for the performances. And thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you saw an expensive looking bag on the subway before seeing this movie and after seeing this movie? Comment below. Thanks so much for joining. I'm your host, Mina Wahab, and you can follow me on Instagram at Mina Makes Magic. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.